its cosmic history from the very beginning, the Big Bang, to family life in the 1950s in a small town in Texas. There's a very strong Christian understanding, not exactly belief, at least a Christian imagination. It tries to understand the world. Evil, suffering, grace, beauty. The very first part of the film, which spells out the character, particularly the mother, is loaded with direct reference, sometimes quotation, sometimes paraphrase, sometimes allusion to the New Testament. It's just soaked in it. And the family, more than that, is very devout Catholic in the film. And the overall architecture of the film, including the creation, going all the way up in the last sequence, I think at least, which is a kind of heaven, where there is final reconciliation. The tree of life, which has been put in all sorts of different religious contexts, but is also one of the two trees that God sort of plants in the Garden of Eden. Is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which has gotten almost all the attention in Christian history from the very beginning. Evil, sin, redemption, the whole bit. What's been neglected, relatively speaking, is the tree of life, which is just, in Malick's terms, the glory of being alive. Amid immense natural beauty, amid human relationships, he is perpetually overwhelmed by this. And this is what seeps into almost every frame of the film. And what Malick tries to do in his film, I think, is to haul us into that very experience, to see what he sees. He's not an observer in this film. His camera is a participant, a presence, and he really wants his viewer to see through his eyes. And there's even a line in the film, I can't remember it exactly, that suggests that he is really trying to push his camera to the point that he wants to achieve a kind of divine sight, to see the world as God sees it, which is with wonder and awe and gladness and appreciation and, a kind of exultant frolic. And there's one sequence with the mother dancing from bed to bed with her children. That's the kind of frolic he has in mind. Christians have an enormous problem with theodicy, God's justice. I think Malick tosses the question back and says, what do you do with beauty? Theodicy is that very old question which is so terribly difficult for just about anybody who has some sort of belief in a good divinity. What do you do with evil? What do you do with human suffering? It is a constant with which we struggle. And it is that terrible incongruity between the record of human suffering, the Holocaust back to Job, and the Tree of Life starts with an epigraph from Job. What do we do with human suffering? And how can God be any way connected with this world amid the enormities of the 20th century, from World War I to the Holocaust, genocide, on it goes. Malick's answer is, yeah, it's there. He does not mince that, he doesn't dilute it, he doesn't turn his face away, he doesn't sentimentalize good, but he says, I think at least, he says, here's a counter to it that greatly complicates the question. Evil is there, it's a Darwinian world, but there is nonetheless a kind of splendor that abides all over if we bother to look. And that's what he's trying to do in the film. He's trying to yank ordinary viewer perception over to his perception. And wow, I think this film, The Tree of Life, particularly in the opening comments by the mother, says, look, this world is formed in love, all of it. And the best thing we can do is attend to that. Notice it. And love everything. That's the quote from the film. Because everything is imbued with love and loves you back if you but pay attention. It is an occasion for delight and ecstasy. And this is what the divine is imbued in creation, if you go back to the Genesis account, in the tree of life, as opposed to the tree of good and evil. I mean, there's this profound, unceasing well of shining. That's another word. Malick's two favorite words are glory and shining. And it's there, imbued, pervading, soaked in all of creation. And this film, children, trees, carnality, music, glorious soundtrack to this thing. Just stunning, overwhelming. It's a creation story. The whole all of cosmic history wrapped around that theodicy question. And it's the death of the brother, the conflict with the father, then finally the culmination of the film, which is the part that most critics don't like, the Sean Penn character, who's had a life of conflict with his father, is a very stern man, loving but stern, and then also carries around the death of his younger brother. Into middle age, and there are kinds of dreamscapes which act out what Penn, this character's name I think is Jack in the film, is wrestling with, and it's a kind of wasteland that he staggers through, and the camera follows him, and finally he comes to this, and everything is white. It's all light. He comes to the shore, and the camera's behind him, and he falls on his knees. And his question has been more or less resolved, I think. There's one about, why did my brother die? Why did my father not really like me that much, or was so harsh on me? And he simply sees light. There are references to Paul, references to the New Testament. A lot of the references are visual. The 4 sections of the film, each one is separated by a black screen. The screen fades to black. And in the middle of the screen, you can hardly tell what it is this light. And the visual reference, if you know the biblical background, is the Gospel of John. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not put it out, overcome it. So, and I think he continually strives for that kind of visual distillation of what we think is a kind of verbal proposition. Reality finally is not matter, not spirit, but it's relationship. Reality is relational, and it's humankind, person to person, humankind to the natural world, humankind to the divine, and they're all interlaced. And they all do a dance together. Some critics have gotten and said, look, the people who are going to appreciate this film are traditional Christian people. Because they get it. They pick up all the illusions, they see the trajectory of the film to the very end. I think he's saying there is no death. There is some sort of continuity, detailed in those last sequences of the Tree of Life, where all these people gather again. And there is this grand dance of reconciliation. And all is forgiven, and all is made whole. That's, again, very traditional Christian notion of what happens out there. It's about this festival of wholeness that comes to us after this very broken world that we somehow managed to exit at the end. Yes. He's picking up those questions that Americans periodically, partly because of their historic religiousness, return to, and they still are returning to it. These very traditional questions, inescapable questions, are haunting us again. So, what does life mean? What's the nature of the cosmos? Does evil finally devour us? All those questions. Is there some sort of light? Is there some sort of redemption, wholeness, reconciliation? So, it's magnificent stuff.